Dr. Rahat, what role does the IDF, Israel Defense Forces, play in Israel's society and culture?
Yeah, well, it is it's very central to
Central.
Israeli
Okay.
culture and society, that's for sure. Because unlike the United States, in which people serve in the military regularly, not all the people, only a small percentage of the people serve in the military. Only when there are war, they take more people. In Israel, at least in principle, each young person supposed to serve in the military unless he is an Arab or an ultra-Orthodox who claim to study Bible or something like this. So this is part of Israeli society, of the socialization of young people in Israel. They spend the ages of 18 to 20 for women and 18 to 21 for men in the military, and some of them are also spending a few weeks or even a month, a year, until the age of 40, 50 in reserve duty.
So in the news, we heard and read about how Israel's defense forces, some members, let me correct that, some members from the reserve units had voiced objection to the reform to the judicial system, the one that Mr. Netanyahu is proposing. How uh, um, how customary is it for members of IDF to wade into politics in Israel?
Well, there were in the past some people from the left refused to serve in the occupied territories, but
Oh, okay.
there were not huge numbers. And some people from the right, from time to time, refused to take part in evacuation of settlers here and there. But right now we are talking about a different type of thing. We're talking about people who declare that they are not ready to serve in the military of a country which is not a democracy. This is a different claim.
Yeah.
They are not asking the government to have this or that policy, but they argue that the so-called reforms that are proposed now are about making Israel into a non-democratic state. And their statement is that we will not serve in the military of a country which is not democratic. That's what they say. And they put quite a lot of pressure on the government, because a disproportional share of the best combat units and intelligence and the Air Force in Israel is composed of people with more liberal point of view, more secular point of view. So this was putting a lot of pressure on the government, and you also have to remember that it also created counter pressures from other people in the military, and the military was in danger of becoming politicized. So that's what happened with the military. You also have to remember that most of the people who served in the military, and not only in the military, but also in the specific secret institutions like the Mossad, the Shin Bet, all of
Yeah.
these. So people who served there in the past were very active in the protest against the government. They said that the government, that the reforms, the so-called reforms that were initiated, would make Israel into a non-democratic country.
I was surprised that the defense minister also was against it, because he's he's of the same party, I presume, as Mr. Netanyahu, right? And did he get fired? He got let go, right?
No, he wasn't fired at the end. It's a typical Israeli story. He was supposed to be fired, but the letter that said that you are fired never got there. And I think that Netanyahu is now waiting.
I'm sorry. What do you mean the letter never got there? It was never.
I mean, there is a formal letter of that say that you are fired. He never got it. That's so he's not fired. He's still there.
Oh, wow.
He was against the promotion of the reforms because he felt that the military is falling apart. There was a lot of pressure, and the protesters also pressured him personally. People who served with him in special operations, in commando units, told him that, things like, we do not recognize you, we fought together, and now you're going to destroy democracy, etc., etc. There was a lot of pressure, and as a person who, the defense minister was a general in the military, he was already almost the chief of staff. But in the last moment, they found that he did something wrong with his house he built. He used the land that wasn't his, so he didn't become a chief of staff. But nevertheless, he grew there. He's part of there, and he felt that as a person who is responsible for Israel security, and we have a lot of security threats, he must ask to stop the reforms, the promotion of the reforms. Otherwise, the security of Israel will be hurt.
So was he for this reform, then changed his mind? Is that what happened? Or we're not sure.
Well, I would say something like this. I think most of the people in government and out of government do not really know what these reforms are about.
Oh, wow.
It's a lot, and they are not for it or not against it. They are not. There are a few people who lead the reforms, people who argue that once again we have a majority, we want to rule, we don't want the court to block us from doing what we think is right to do, and the other forces that think that the reform is wrong because democracy is much more than the rule of the majority. And many of the other forces are supporting or rejecting because they trust more the people from this side or that side. And you also have to remember that politics, like in the United States, is a lot about social identity, and religion have to do a lot with it. If you will want to guess what a person think about the reform, you have to ask him how religious you are. You will know. I mean, the ultra-Orthodox support the reform, the national religious, while the more secular people, even right-wing secular people at this point of time, are against this reform.
Interesting. Yeah.
It's a lot about identity. It's a lot about heuristics. People see that Netanyahu support the reform and they support Netanyahu, therefore they support the reform. People see that Netanyahu support the reform. They do not like Netanyahu. They reject the reform.
Reject it. Let's take a break.
Complicated reform. Yeah.
Sure is. Sounds like it. Let's take a break here. Stay with me and Dr. Rahat as we get into the perspective.